The rain hammered the windows of our cramped Brooklyn apartment like it was trying to break in, mirroring the storm raging inside me as I stared at Jake's silhouette against the lightning flashes. He'd just walked in soaked from head to toe, his usual cocky grin replaced by something raw, something that made my chest tighten, because in that split second, before he even spoke, I knew he'd seen the photo on my phone, the one of me kissing Alex at last summer's Pride Parade. And as his eyes met mine, dark and unreadable, he didn't yell or bolt. He just stepped closer, whispering, "Why didn't you tell me?" His voice cracking like the thunder outside, pulling me into a truth I'd buried deeper than my own fears. I froze, my heart slamming against my ribs, because Jake, straight as an arrow Jake, the guy who'd high-fived me through every bad date and shared my Netflix queue without question, was looking at me not with disgust, but with a hunger that mirrored my own hidden ache. We'd been roommates for 2 years, ever since we bonded over cheap beer and late-night shifts at the coffee shop in Williamsburg, him crashing on my couch after a brutal breakup with his high school sweetheart, me fresh out of the closet and dodging family calls from Ohio. He was the rock, the bro who fixed my leaky faucet with duct tape and a laugh, who blasted classic rock while cooking eggs that tasted like home. But lately, the air between us had thickened, charged with glances that lingered too long, silences that said too much. That photo? It was nothing compared to the secret I'd kept. Every time he slung an arm around my shoulders after a long day, I imagined it staying there forever. "Why tell you?" I managed, my voice barely above the downpour's roar, shoving my phone into my pocket like it could erase the exposure. Jake ran a hand through his wet hair, droplets tracing paths down his neck that I forced myself not to follow with my eyes. He was built like the quarterback he'd been in high school, solid, unyielding, but tonight, he looked frayed, like the edges of the old band tee clinging to his chest were the only thing holding him together. "Because we're supposed to be in this shit together, Eli," he said, stepping even closer, close enough that I could smell the rain on his skin mixed with that faint cedar cologne he swore was just for job interviews. His hand hovered near my arm, hesitant, and when it finally landed, gentle, tentative, it sent a jolt through me hotter than any lightning strike. We stood there, the world outside blurring into gray sheets of water, and for the first time, I saw the cracks in his armor, the way his jaw clenched not in anger, but in fear of what came next. That doesn't change anything," he stammered, but his eyes betrayed him, flicking to my lips before darting away. "Change everything," I wanted to scream. "You're the one constant I can't afford to lose, the straight guy who's made me question if labels even matter anymore." Instead, I pulled back just enough to breathe, murmuring, "It changes everything if you let it." He didn't let go. And in that moment, as the storm raged on, I wondered if the real thunder was the one building between us. Unspoken, inevitable, and terrifyingly real. The next morning dawned too bright, the sun slicing through the blinds like it had no idea about the wreckage from the night before. I woke up on the couch, neck stiff from the awkward angle, Jake's hoodie draped over me like a half-hearted apology. He was already in the kitchen, the sizzle of bacon filling the air, but the easy banter was gone, replaced by this heavy quiet that made every clink of the spatula feel like an accusation. I rubbed my eyes, trying to shake off the dream I'd had. Us on that rooftop across the street, his hands on my waist, pulling me in under a sky full of stars. But reality crashed back as he slid a plate my way without a word. "Thanks," I muttered, poking at the eggs. Jake leaned against the counter, arms crossed, his gaze fixed on the window where last night's rain had left streaks like tears. He was avoiding me, or maybe avoiding himself. Either way, it stung more than indifference would have. We'd always been the odd couple in our friend group. Me, the artsy barista with a sketchbook full of half-finished portraits. Him, the aspiring mechanic fixing bikes in a garage down in Bushwick. Both of us scraping by on dreams and ramen. Our friends, Sarah and Mia from the shop, teased us endlessly about being married, but it was all laughs until now. Until that photo cracked open the facade. "So," he finally said, voice rough like he hadn't slept, "about last night." I braced myself, fork midway to my mouth. Here it comes, the awkward talk, the let's just be bros speech that would bury whatever spark I'd imagined. But Jake surprised me, sliding into the chair across from me, his knee brushing mine under the table and not pulling away. I get it. The hiding. My sister's the same way. She came out last year, and Dad still pretends it's a phase. His words hung there, soft and unexpected, and I looked up to find his eyes steady, not judging, but searching. Jake's family was all Midwest stoicism, football games and barbecues, the kind of place where gay was whispered like a curse. Yet here he was, offering a bridge I hadn't known he could build. I set my fork down, the food turning to ash in my throat. It's not just hiding from you. It's everything. The looks at work, the texts from home that stopped coming. My voice cracked, and I hated it. Hated how vulnerable it made me feel in front of him. The guy who'd once arm-wrestled a customer for undertipping. Jake reached across the table, his hand covering mine for a beat too long, thumb tracing a circle that made my pulse stutter. "Then don't hide from me," he said simply, like it was the easiest thing in the world. But nothing about it was easy. Not when his touch lingered, not when I could still feel the ghost of his breath on my neck from the night before. We spent the day pretending normalcy. Him tinkering with his motorcycle in the living room, oil stains blooming on the drop cloth, me sketching at the coffee table, capturing the curve of his shoulders bent over the engine. But the air hummed with unspoken questions, and by afternoon, Sarah burst through the door with her usual chaos, arms laden with thrift store finds and a bottle of cheap rose. "Roomy date night," she declared, oblivious to the tension, Mia trailing behind with a playlist of indie folk that filled the space like a buffer. They were our anchors, Sarah, the fiery lesbian activist who dragged me to my first rally, her buzz cut and tattoos a badge of unapologetic pride. Mia, the quiet-by woman with a laugh like sunlight, always mediating our group's dramas with gentle wisdom. As we sprawled on the floor, passing the bottle and swapping stories, Jake's foot nudged mine under the rug, a secret Morse code that sent heat creeping up my spine. Sarah caught it, her eyebrow arching like she'd just solved a puzzle. "Spill, boys. What's with the vibe?" Mia chuckled, but Jake just shrugged, his grin forced. "Just plotting world domination." Laughter rippled, but later, when the girls crashed in our spare room, giggling about exes and crushes, I found Jake on the fire escape, staring at the city lights twinkling like distant promises. I joined him, the metal cool under my palms, the night air crisp with the promise of fall. "They're good people," I said, bumping his shoulder. He nodded, but his eyes were far away, lost in whatever war he was fighting inside. "Yeah, but what if? What if I'm not?" The words slipped out quiet, and my breath caught. "Not what? Not straight? Not sure?" Before I could ask, he turned, his face inches from mine, the city hum fading to nothing. "Eli, that photo, it's not the problem. It's me seeing you like that, happy, and realizing I've been blind." His hand found my jaw, thumb brushing my cheek, and time fractured. We didn't kiss. Not yet, but the almost was a cliffhanger, pulling us toward an edge neither could name. Days blurred into a tentative rhythm, Jake's touches multiplying like stars at dusk, a hand on my lower back guiding me through crowded streets, fingers lingering in my hair when he thought I was asleep on the couch. Work became our escape, the coffee shop buzzing with NYU kids and tourists, Sarah slinging lattes with her signature flair, Mia handling the register with serene efficiency. But whispers followed me now, after a coworker accidentally outed me in the group chat, jokes laced with edges that made my stomach knot. "Eli's got that glow, new boyfriend?" one asked, winking, and I forced a laugh, glancing at Jake across the counter, where he was mopping spills with a focus that screamed deflection. One shift, as rain slicked the sidewalks again, a regular, an older guy with a salt and pepper beard and a rainbow pin, leaned in while I frothed milk. "Proud of you, kid. Saw the parade pics online. Takes guts." His smile was kind, but it amplified the knot in my chest. Visibility was a double-edged sword, slicing open wounds I'd barely scarred over. Jake overheard, his rag pausing mid-swipe, and later in the break room, he cornered me against the lockers. "You okay?" His voice was low, protective, but his eyes held that storm again. Jealousy? Fear? "It's fine." I lied, but he didn't buy it, stepping closer until our breaths synced. "It's not, and neither am I." What he meant hung between us, heavy as the steam from the espresso machine. That night, our friends dragged us to a queer open mic in the village, the kind of place where vulnerability was currency. Sarah performed a poem about lost loves and reclaimed power, her voice cutting through the smoke like a blade, earning whoops and snaps. Mia followed with a ukulele cover of a Hosier tune, her fingers deft and her eyes shining. When Jake nudged me on stage, "Your turn, artist," I balked, but the crowd's energy pulled me up, sketchbook in hand. I read a piece I'd written months ago about a boy loving in shadows, words tumbling out raw and unfiltered. The room leaned in, and when I finished, applause crashed like waves. Back at our table, Jake's pride beamed brighter than the stage lights. "That was you, Eli. All of it." His hand squeezed my thigh under the table, bold in the dimness, and for a heartbeat, the world narrowed to us. But Mia's gaze sharpened, catching the shift. "Jake, you good?" she asked later, as Sarah flirted with the MC. He hesitated, then, figuring shit out. She nodded, wise as ever. "Take your time, but don't break his heart in the process." Her words landed like a warning, and as we walked home through misty streets, Jake's silence grew thorns. The breaking point came unexpectedly, on a crisp October Saturday when Jake's ex, Lauren, showed up unannounced. She'd driven in from Jersey, all glossy hair and designer jeans. The ghost of his past materialized on our doorstep with a bottle of wine and a smile that screamed reconciliation. I answered the door, gut twisting as she breezed past, calling his name like she owned the place. "Jake, missed you." He appeared from the bedroom, face paling, and hugged her stiffly, polite, distant, but enough to ignite the insecurities I'd buried. I retreated to the kitchen, pretending to scroll my phone, but their laughter filtered through, easy and familiar, stabbing deeper than silence. Lauren was straight-laced perfection, the girl who'd pinned his senior photo to her locker, the one who'd called me the fun roommate, with a wink that felt like dismissal. Now, she was here, cooing over his new tools, touching his arm like muscle memory. When she spotted me, her hug was perfunctory. "Eli, still slinging coffee? Jake says you're quite the artist." Her tone dripped condescension, and I bit back the retort. "Yeah, and you're still pretending he's yours." Dinner was torture. Takeout pizza on paper plates, Lauren dominating stories of her amazing marketing job, Jake nodding along with that forced grin. But under the table, his foot sought mine, a desperate anchor, and I pulled away, the hurt too fresh. Later, as she crashed on the couch, insisting on catching up, I locked myself in my room, sketches scattering like fallen leaves. Why now? Why her? The jealousy clawed, irrational and fierce, because Jake wasn't mine, not really. But the almost kiss on the fire escape whispered otherwise. Midnight found me sketching her face, sharp cheekbones, knowing eyes, when a knock rattled the door. Jake slipped in, closing it soft behind him. "She's asleep." His voice was wrecked, eyes red-rimmed. "This isn't. I didn't ask her to come." I tossed the sketchpad aside, words spilling hot. "Then why entertain it?" The laughs, the touches, like I'm invisible. He recoiled, then surged forward, hands framing my face. "You're not. God, Eli, you're everything I can't stop thinking about." The confession hung, electric, and then his lips crashed into mine, not tentative, but starving, like he'd been holding back a tidal wave. We broke apart gasping, foreheads pressed, the room spinning. "I'm scared," he admitted, voice breaking. "Of this. Of me." "Me too," I wanted to say, but instead, I pulled him closer, our bodies aligning in the dim lamplight, hearts pounding in sync. It wasn't passion's fire, but emotion's quiet burn, the kind that reshapes souls. Lauren left at dawn, oblivious, her goodbye kiss on his cheek a farewell to what was. But as Jake watched her go, his hand found mine, interlacing fingers with a resolve that said, "This is real." Winter crept in with its bite, blanketing Brooklyn in snow that muffled the city's roar, but inside our apartment, warmth bloomed tentative and fierce. Jake's touches evolved, from stolen glances to open affection, his arm around my waist while we binged shows, lazy mornings where he'd trace patterns on my back with calloused fingers. Friends noticed. Sarah grilled him over brunch at our favorite diner, her eyes narrowing playfully. "So, straight boy, what's the verdict?" He flushed, but met her gaze. "Working on it. But Eli, he's it. Mia smiled, squeezing my hand under the table, her quiet approval a balm. Yet shadows lingered. Jake's family loomed, holidays approaching like storm clouds. Thanksgiving in Ohio, where his dad's handshake was firmer than his hugs, his mom's questions veiled barbs. Bringing anyone special? She'd asked on a call, and Jake's lie. Just Eli, my roommate, tasted bitter. I felt the weight, the unspoken invitation to play pretend, but pushed it down, focusing on us. We built rituals. Thursday night sketches where I'd draw him poring over engine manuals, capturing the furrow in his brow. Him surprising me with playlists of songs that felt like you. Raw acoustics about longing and light. One evening, as flurries danced outside, we bundled up for the holiday market in Dumbo, strings of lights twinkling like captured stars. Jake bought me a scarf, wrapping it around my neck with hands that trembled slightly. "Keep you warm," he murmured, pulling me into an alcove away from the crowds. Our kiss, there was slow, exploratory, tasting of hot cider and possibility, the world fading to just his warmth against the chill. "I love you," he whispered against my lips, the words slipping out unplanned, and my heart soared. Even as doubt whispered back, "Does he mean it? Or is this the honeymoon haze?" The doubt crystallized at New Year's, when his sister, Taylor, visited, out and proud, with her girlfriend Lena in tow, a whirlwind of stories from their life in Chicago. Taylor was fire to Jake's earth. Pixie cut, tattoos of queer icons, voice that commanded rooms. She clocked us immediately, hugging me tight. "Finally, I've been rooting for this since that awkward FaceTime last year." Lena, soft-spoken with a healer's touch, pulled Jake aside later, her words gentle but probing. "It's okay to be scared, but don't let fear rewrite who you are." Over mulled wine, Taylor shared her coming-out war stories, rejection from extended family, the prejudice that scarred but didn't break her. Jake listened, rapt, then confessed in the quiet after they left. "I want that for us." No hiding. But his eyes held storms, texts from his dad about manly expectations, old teammates' jokes that landed like punches. I held him through it, our bodies tangled on the couch, whispering assurances until sleep claimed us. Yet in the dark, I wondered if love could bridge divides built on denial. Spring thawed the ice, but unearthed deeper fractures. At work, a new manager, straight, conservative, with a penchant for traditional values, started sidelining me. Shifts cut after rumors of my lifestyle surfaced. Sarah raged, threatening HR, but I waved it off, the exhaustion of fighting every front bone deep. Jake noticed, his protectiveness flaring. He confronted the guy in the alley, voices raised until I pulled him back. "This isn't your battle," I said, but his eyes blazed. "It is, because it's ours." The real clash came at Pride, our group's annual pilgrimage. Banners waved, drums thrummed through Midtown, a sea of colors celebrating what we'd fought for. Jake walked beside me, hand in mine, his pride a quiet armor. But midway his phone buzzed, his dad, calling unprompted. "Saw the news. That parade thing, you there?" The line went dead after Jake's mumbled yes, and he deflated, grip tightening. "He knows. About us." We pushed through, dancing in the after-party at a rooftop bar, bodies swaying to pulsing beats, but the call lingered like smoke. Later, alone in a cab home, he broke. "What if he disowns me? What if I'm not enough?" Tears streaked his face, and I cupped it, fierce. "You're everything. To me. To this." Our kiss was salt-tinged, desperate, reaffirming in the neon glow. Summer heat waves tested us further, the apartment a sauna of sweat and secrets. Jake enrolled in night classes for his mechanic certification, ambition sparking, but stress frayed him. Late arguments over nothing, silences thick as humidity. One night, after a blowout about my overreacting to a flirty customer, he stormed out, returning hours later with apologies and a six-pack. "I'm an idiot," he said, pulling me onto the fire escape. "Scared you'll see through me." I laughed, bittersweet. We've both got ghosts. Under the stars, we talked, really talked, about fears, about the boy he'd kissed in college and buried, about my ex who'd left scars of betrayal. Healing came in layers. Sarah and Mia threw us a queer couple barbecue, inviting allies and activists, laughter echoing off brownstones. Taylor flew in, mediating a tense call with Jake's parents that ended in cautious truce. His dad's gruff, "Be happy, son," a crack in the wall. Through it, our love deepened, not in grand gestures, but in the everyday. Jake learning drag makeup for a friend's show, me fixing his resume with sketches of his dream garage. Yet climax brewed in autumn's rust when Lauren reappeared, not at our door, but via a mutual friend's wedding invite. Jake agonized, but we went together, suits crisp, hands linked. She was there, radiant on another man's arm, but her eyes found us during toasts, widening at our openness. Later, by the cake, she cornered him. "Didn't see this coming. Happy for you." Her smile was tight, and Jake's response, calm, assured, marked his growth, happier than ever. The wedding's aftermath was our reckoning. Driving home through falling leaves, Jake pulled over on a quiet road, turning to me with eyes like oceans. "Marry me? Not now, but someday, when we're ready." Laughter bubbled through tears, my yes a vow etched in starlight. We drove on, the future unfolding, not without storms, but with hands clasped, unbreakable. But life, cruel curator, had one more twist. Months later, at a family gathering Jake's parents hosted, tentative olive branch, we arrived to warmth, only for his uncle, drunk on eggnog, to unleash slurs that shattered the peace. "Fairy boy now." Jake shielded me, voice steel. "Say that again, and we're gone." The room froze, his dad rising, not to defend tradition, but to eject his brother, mumbling, "Not in my house." It wasn't full acceptance, but a start, born of Jake's courage. Through it all, our bond evolved, from roommates to lovers, from fear to fierce. Eli and Jake, two hearts, once divided by labels, now woven in love's complex tapestry. And as winter returned, snow soft on our windows, I held him close, knowing we'd weather any storm, because in his arms, I was home.